Well, next Sunday, Belfast plays host to two parades. One is a homecoming parade organised by the Ministry of Defence to welcome returning Royal Irish Regiment and Territorial Army soldiers from Afghanistan and Iraq. The other is a protest march organised by Sinn Féin to highlight opposition to both wars and the RIR. Is this parody of esteem in action, a parade for each side, or a sad reflection of deep tensions in society here? Ulster Unionist Fred Cobain, a supporter of the RIR parade, and Sinn Féin's Paul Maskey, an organiser of the counter parade, are with me now. You're both very welcome. Fred Cobain, just outline for us, in your view, what is the point of the parade to welcome home the soldiers?
Well, I think that's quite simple, Jim. We have men and women from throughout this community who have served with distinction in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think it's a chance for ordinary citizens like myself, and I hope tens of thousands of other citizens, to show their appreciation for the work they did there. On behalf, I have to say, of the democratically elected government, the soldiers didn't go to Iraq of their own volition, ordered there by the government and served there with distinction. And a chance to, of course, remember those men and women who didn't come back. OK. Paul
Maskey, from your point of view, what's the point of the counter-protest?
Well, I think if we put this into perspective, 45% of Belfast City councillors were in opposition to what was called a civic reception what Belfast City Council was going to organise. And then still, I think what we have to believe, it's hard to believe that the British Ministry of Defence then applied for a parade to walk through our streets of Belfast. Now, I have a right, obviously, as a nationalist who has suffered at the hands of Britain here in Ireland, obviously to show my opposition against their oppression here, Afghanistan and Iraq, and I think that's very, very important because we need to make sure that we all have a say in this event.
Well, take Fred Cobain's point there that these soldiers were doing their job. They were ordered there by the democratically elected government under which they serve. It's not just nationalists who maybe are opposed to the war in Afghanistan or Iraq. Many of the soldiers themselves may not even agree with it initially, but they're there doing their job. Do they not deserve to be at least welcomed home, having done their tours of duty?
Well, again, when you look at places, other cities in Britain, who are actually stopping these type of events taking place because they're controversial. They're having big issues within other cities in Britain. Most of these events are now taking in place within inside barracks, and I think that has to be recognised. So why the MOD, British Army, hasn't marched in the streets of Belfast since the Second World War, and now they're doing it now in 2008. And I think if we look at that scenario, is why are they doing it? Because this was supposed to be a homecoming. There's a civic reception for them, which a number, 45% of the councillors in Belfast voted against, but that's happening.
Okay.
And people can go and see their loved ones there as well. But now what's happening is we see a saluting stand, we see an RAF flyover in the sky, and we see marches from bands from British Army, and we see a number of British Army regiments that are taking place.
Fred, come back on that then. If it's organised by the Ministry of Defence, there are two elements here. The Ministry of Defence parade, there's the City Council civic reception. The fact that the MOD are organising it, does that not change the nature then of what we're seeing?
Absolutely not. This is, as I'm saying, this is a chance for citizens of Belfast to show their appreciation of what the armed forces did in Afghanistan and Iraq. I want to make three quick points, Jim. The people who will be marching through the city centre next Sunday will be Protestants and Catholics. They will come from north and south of the border. And so this isn't, as Paul is trying to give the impression that there's some sort of triumphalism. It's nothing to do with it. And the other thing I have to say to you is, and this is, I think, what Paul has to realise, the number of people who have actually came to me, Protestant and Catholic, over the last week, who are, I have to say, outraged at this protest. And the damage it's doing, I have to say, in the long term for community relations here, when politicians should actually be working together, trying to ensure we're not dragged back to the difficulties we had 30 years ago. We see a parade coming through the centre of Belfast. We see a protest which really is more about sectarianism and racism than it is about the war.
Well,
we're talking about the war. I'm anti-war.
Okay.
I'm on the record as being anti-war. But this protest is nothing about the war.
Well, you pick up on that. Paul Maskey, if it was really about the war, why not protest whenever George Bush was here instead? Martin McGuinness gladly welcomed him to Stormont. We haven't seen Sinn Féin organised, for instance, in the US, where you have a big organisation calling people onto the streets to protest against the war. So why this day? Why this time?
Well, let me make it clear. When George Bush was in Belfast, I, along with many of my colleagues and many thousands of people, was in Belfast City Centre, outside the Belfast City Hall, protesting against that offence. So I am clear on record, but I've done that, and I will continue to do that. But I have to make it very, very clear. It's about the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, but it's also about the war here. I mean, this military parade, which is going to be taking place in our streets in Belfast City Centre next week, is a complete slap in the face to many people from within our community who have lost their loved ones. I can mention the Ballymurphy massacre, I can mention Spring Hill, I can mention New Lodge, and the list is endless.
Clearly the point that is nothing to do really then with the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, but you've chosen that to highlight other concerns that should best be addressed at a different time?
No, I've made it very clear from the start, from a number of weeks ago, obviously when we started to talk to parades commissioners and others, that this parade is against the war here, Britain's dirty war in Ireland, and the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and their legal opposition.
I hope today we weren't going to get into the argument about dirty wars. I mean, Paul is in support of an organisation that has a parade through the city centre which glorifies the provisional IRA, right? This is an organisation that took busmen, or took workmen off a bus, lined them up against the wall, to find those who were Protestant and assassinated them on the street. I mean, a dirty war. This is an organisation that, I mean, went along to a dog show and hung, no, but this is important, hung fire bombs on the grills of the windows and incinerated people.
Are you dirty war? You say you're concerned about the damage this would do to community relations. Well, why not then perhaps just ask the MOD to forgo their parade and have the civic reception?
Because look, this is not about the war, Jim. This is about racism. This is about being anti-British. That's what this is about. And I'm saying when politicians should be leading this community out of this, we've had 30 years of this, when we should be given leadership, trying to get communities to work together, trying to overcome sectarianism and racism, this is what we get.
Paul Maskey.
Well, I think the point is, and Fred's here, and Fred's not one of the organisers of the MOD parade. I think it would be much better if it's somebody like John Hutton, who's the Minister of Defence, or Sean Woodward, who's the Secretary of State here, to come to this studio and other studios and to explain to the community that I represent why they're going ahead with this protest, or sorry, their parade, when they knew that the opposition this created in Belfast City Council split Belfast City Council down the middle. But yet they're not answering. The British Ministry of Defence aren't answering to me or to anybody else from the community who I represent why they're going ahead with this parade.
But Sinn Féin, for instance, is now part of the policing board, signs up and supports the PSNI. You no longer refer to its history as the RUC, to what it did, and yet here you're talking about the RIR, its history as the UDR. Why are you willing to let things go in one area but continue bringing things back to the past here?
Well, if you're talking about policing, we've worked very hard obviously to change policing within the society, and we're continue to do so because it's not right as yet. It's not perfect, and that's exactly what we're working very hard to do. What I have to say is this is not only about the RIR, this is the British Army on our streets, a number of regiments, as well as you have the RAF going to be flying over in a fly path over Belfast. Now, what this is like a catwalk for Britain here on the streets of Belfast next Sunday, and I think it's wrong, and I think the MOD should be on shows like this defending their decision why they're going ahead, because I think it's appalling what they've done this.
I have to say, Jim, I mean, Paul has his views, he's a Republican, has his views. I'm a unionist. I mean, I'm proud of the people who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm proud to go out next Sunday with my family and, as I hope, tens of thousands of other people from across the community to show your appreciation of what these people have actually did. And the other thing I have to say to you, it was and I don't want to give Paul a history lesson in this respect, but it was a British Army who fought in 1939 to 45 to defeat fascism so that Paul can stand next Sunday protesting.
Surely, Paul Maskey, parity of esteem means that people here who are British citizens should feel able to welcome home their troops.
And I have the right to protest against that as well.
But you're saying the MOD shouldn't have this parade?
Well, because
so you're saying they shouldn't have it?
And the reason why I'm saying that for, because it has created
so you'd have no reason to protest if there was no parade?
Exactly, and that's the point what we're trying to make, and I think that is what the nuts and bolts of this issue here, is that if there's no parade, and then there'll be no protest, because I, as a citizen
So clearly
here,
you don't think they have a right to parade?
Well, what I'm saying is, if they have a right, remember, there's a civic reception, which I voted against. That's not the issue here. The issue is that they're turning Belfast into a catwalk, because remember, the point I made earlier is that they are not, many cities throughout Britain are actually taking these off the streets and confining these type of offence to barracks because of the controversy that it creates there.
We must leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed.